you're gonna lose depending upon where you're at and the risks involved. I don't know, 10 to 25% of the company probably would be my guess without knowing anything. So you lose that. Okay. If that's the price, then that's the price. I just have a very pragmatic view of these things. It's like if this is the deal that's to be made, then so be it. This is the deal that's to be made. If you need that money and this is the only way you can go forward with what you're doing, and there's no creative way that you can spend less, then that's what you need to do. I wouldn't worry about, the dilution. I understand the fear and everything, but just if you're successful at the end of the day and you go through the math, you'll recognize that it won't matter. You're still going to have a ton of money. So it's more important to raise the money than it is to try and squeeze every last percentage point out. And then going back to your question about, should I do this as a safe note? Should I do this? Should I do this as just a straight standard investment? There are arguments on both sides of this in terms of what to do. It's a matter, typically it's the investors that you're dealing with. You want to have some flexibility because, certainly this size of investment kind of reeks of angels or friends and family. If you're dealing with friends and family, then I would not do a safe note because they're probably not going to be sophisticated to understand it. If we're dealing with angels, then sure, you probably can do a safe note, but you need to be flexible. Okay, one more question we have here. At the pre-seed stage, is it important or beneficial to already have intellectual property or copyrights? The more benefits and strengths we have as a business, the better. It's always better to have these things, to have intellectual property, copyrights, patents, all these things. How much are they really going to matter? Who knows? But it's better to have them and better to be thinking this way from the start than not. Okay, let's go to our next question. Uh-oh. Zoom is doing crazy things today. Okay, here we go. I am doing a solo startup. Some directors from hedge fund showed early traction. I want to introduce you to your product internally when yours is live. But when I try to find co-founders, they don't join because it's going to be too hard. My idea hasn't met product market fit or even problem market fit. I get too confused if I am just dreaming or is something wrong? Yes, something is wrong. How can I get self-belief even if I do not have it, but I feel it's being weakened? Okay, well, there's a lot to unpack there. If you don't believe, then nobody else is going to. And I'm reading a lot into this, but if I am a co-founder, you're talking to me and you're pitching me, why am I going to want to work with you if you don't believe? So I'll let that sit for a second. I'll have a drink of water. I don't know what to do to tell you to have belief or not. And I guess I'm being a little bit harsh here, but I just can't help with that. You either believe or you don't. It sounds like you really don't believe in what you're doing. So if you don't believe, then you should move on and do something else. Sorry. Okay, let's go to the next question. To achieve the dream of reaching a $60 million market, I'll have to dilute a lot of my equity. If I give away 25% now, tell me how much dilution I should expect in the next round. Also, I plan to pitch to Y Combinator. Okay. Well, each round is going to be different. As a general rule, the smaller, when we're doing the first round of funding, and this is going to vary by region and everything else and the type of investment that you do, but typically at the beginning, if we're raising like $100,000-ish or whatever from friends and family or whatever, you'll give away about 10% of the company. Then as we start getting into the larger rounds of funding, be them with angels, and then as we start getting into early stage venture capital, the range is going to be somewhere around, again, it's going to vary, but let's say 15, which would be fantastic, to more likely 20 to 25 to 30%. Then as you start raising big amounts of money, the percentages that you give away get smaller. And then suddenly it gets down depending upon the rounds, again, this is if your company's doing well. If it's not doing well, then you face the risk of being recapitalized, but that's again a different story. But if we're talking here, this would likely be like 10% or something like that in the bigger rounds, 50 million, $100 million rounds. So you can kind of do the math in terms of what you're going to get diluted depending upon how much money you need to get the cash flow positive. This is part of the work that you need to do, is how much money do I need? And remember, you can still be very wealthy and own 10% of your company. At the end of the day, I'm not saying you will, but again, do you want to be successful or not? That's what should drive you. And I'm not saying give away your equity either. I am saying you want to do the right thing. You want to be successful. By the way, there are other pieces that you're going to have to dilute yourself with too. If you're going to have employees, they're going to want a piece of the pie. And if you don't offer them the right amounts, you're not going to get the best employees. If you want really good co-founders, you're going to have to be fair to them too. They're going to want a piece of the pie. All these things dilute you. However, the idea is that by adding all these great people, these really good investors, the value of the smaller piece of the pie that I have is going to be worth more. Okay, next question. This is a really good one. Hi, Brett. Do you always dilute proportionally between the shareholders? Yes. So let's go through a very simple example here. Let's say that you and your co-founders split up the equity between the two of you as co-founders 50-50. So you own 50%, your co-founder owns 50%. But let's say that you invest $100,000 in the company, your co-founder doesn't. What should I do? What should the dilution be? And who owns what at the end of this? Well, what's your 100,000 investor? Because now you're operating as an investor. What will that be worth? Let's say that that's worth 10% of the company, which is probably about right. So you get 10% there. You're going to get diluted. Your founder's equity is going to get diluted by 10%, as is your co-founder's equity by 10%. So that means you own 45% as a founder. Your co-founder owns 45%, but you own 10% more as an investor. So now your total is 55%. Hope you get the idea. Okay, let's go to our next question. How to evaluate a potential co-founder? Indirectly, that doesn't feel like an interview because people won't also answer honestly to direct questions. Like, how do you judge for honesty, integrity, etc.? Well, you have to start building relationships with people. And sometimes with co-founders, it takes multiple meetings. But make no mistake about this, these are interviews. And by the way, you're being interviewed too. Good people have choices. It is a bi-directional communication, but you can ask questions. How would you handle this situation? How did you recruit your team? What would you do in that situation? There are all sorts of things that you can do to learn more about somebody. I have articles posted on my website about this that you can find. I think I've done videos on this subject as well. But you can ask people questions and don't be afraid. And also you should ask for references. And there are two types of references since we're talking about references. It's fine to ask somebody if they're going to be your co-founder and you don't know them, or an employee that you don't know. I'd like references. And ideally, I'd like a peer. I'd like somebody who's been an employee. This would be for a manager level person, somebody who's been a peer, an employee, somebody that you've worked for. Those three things. And then they'll give you the references. And usually those references are going to be very good. If they're not, red flags should be going off all over the place. And the other thing you want to look for is, sorry, I'm about to sneeze if I'm not careful. So the other thing that you're going to look for are what are called backdoor references. Backdoor references are, can you find people that know this person and will give you kind of an objective viewpoint of what they're like? And these are really valuable to do, to go talk to people that that might know somebody. These are what are called backdoor references. In other words, they're kind of unauthorized, but they're really good. They're very helpful. You have to understand the perspective of people too, by the way, because sometimes people have access to grind, and you can run into this too. So you have to be a little bit careful with these to understand the perspectives. And one of the things you can do at the end of this is you can ask, let's say that you have somebody who comes back and the backdoor references are bad for whatever reason. You can ask them, what am I going to hear from people that know you really well? Tell me what I'm going to hear. And this is, by the way, another honesty check, because people who are honest will tell you, well, these are the good things you're going to hear, and these are the bad things that you're going to hear, all of which are fine. And you want honesty. Integrity matters in this. If you think you can bring on somebody who's what I call a brilliant jerk, we've all met them, we've all worked with them, the really smart, quote unquote, smart person who maybe isn't that smart, but is a jerk, difficult to deal with, doesn't answer questions properly, lies, but seems like a brilliant technologist or whatever person they might be in your company. You can't work with them. It will fail. I can guarantee it. And if you think, well, I can live with it, it'll be okay. Never is. It's a mistake almost all of us make, including me. We all avoid it as best you can. I'll tell you what the question is. How much equity should I aim to retain in the end? And by the way, I already have set aside 10% from this for ESOP. Okay, that's great, but you may need more. And remember, you're going to have employees all through the life of the company. So 10%, that 10% might last you a year to 2 years. Then you're going to need another 10% and another after that and another after that. I can't tell you what your equity is going to be at the end of this. I can't. And by the way, just because you have an initial grant that you've given yourself and agreed to doesn't mean that you can't ask for over time more equity from your board of directors. I have a rule for that, but it's a little more complicated and we're running out of time. So sorry, I can't answer it all the way. Okay, does a country's politics also affect investors? And when a country's economy is at rock bottom, is it actually a good time for startups? Okay, I'm going to answer the second question first, which I'm going to answer in a broader sense, which is more about recessions. Are recessions a good time for startups? Oh, yeah. And I'll tell you why they're a good time for startups.
Meet Kiana, Shiori, and Karthik, just a few merchants from around the globe who have switched to Shopify, the leading e-commerce platform. Why they
वीडियो स्टार्ट करने से
Oh, yeah. And I'll tell you why they're a good time for startups, because recessions don't last forever. I think the average time of a recession is like 18 months or something like that. So if you think about it, let's say you get funded right at the beginning of a recession and you're in development for a year and a half or whatever it is, and you get your product out, you're getting your product out just as the economy is getting better. So that's just one of the benefits of being able to start during a recession. The other benefits are it's easier to find people. They have less choices. Rent is cheaper. Equipment's cheaper. All these things are cheaper. It just takes guts to do it. And you find out who the true entrepreneurs are when you start a company in a recession. So yeah, recessions are great. That's what I would tell you. Your politics, boy, that's a harder one to answer. And especially when I think about right now in the United States, what's going on with our politics and how that's going to affect things, that is a wild guess, how things are going to be affected by what's going on here. I have no idea. And it could be catastrophic. If you think about really the worst case possibilities here, we have tariffs, which are going to raise prices on everything. It could be that we have a huge market crash that happens because stocks are at an insane level right now in the United States and are likely to go down. And you have the out of controlness of what seems to be happening here. So there's a lot of variability. Markets don't like variability. Remember, you're dealing with a class of investors here. So people may want to just hold on to their money, which may make, this is the flip side of it, raising money is harder in a recession, even without all the political elements, because the bar is much higher. Doesn't mean it can't be done. We raised money during a massive recession, but it was really hard. And the bar is higher. You give up more of the company, which we ended up doing. But, it was a fair deal. That was the market. Okay. Let's go to our next question. Thanks for all the great work that you do. You're welcome. About the legal work of setting a new company up.